So this is where I'm choosing my my brushes and things like that. This is the hard round that I said for you guys to choose. And this is how you adjust the size right here.
Okay.
So I'm gonna make mine fairly large. You can see how big the brush is by mousing over your screen here. You see that big circle?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to choose something that's fairly big because I'm just going to be putting some big flat pieces of color down to sort of, let's see, where are you? To sort of just define some color spaces. So these are going to be leaves. And I'm just making some very simple shapes here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to go fast because for the sake of you guys. Making just general leaf shapes. I'm not worried about the background still showing. That just adds depth to this. I go the outline and then fill in the center. Outline, fill in the center.
And I can see already that pen is making such a huge difference.
Yes,
because
it's very natural.
You know, the graphics that I do, I sit there for hours trying to use this little mouse over pad that I've got. So I so need one of those.
Yes, it makes things a lot easier. Okay, so I've got my little blobby shapes here. And now I want to go in with my detail to sketch and define those shapes here. I'm going to go back to my foreground color and choose white.
Do you usually add another layer to do that, or do you just go right over it?
I will just go right over it. You can, though. There's nothing wrong with having multiple layers. Like, you will not be upset. Usually you're upset for having not enough layers. So always err on the side of caution. Especially if you're just practicing. It's an easy way to just delete a layer and then try again. So I'm happy with this that I've got going on. Now I can create another layer if I want to and start adding in my sketchy part. So what I'm going to do is just very roughly sketch in some lines that basically represent a leaf. And this is just what I call texturing. It does not need to be, you know, specific. You can see how fast I'm going. Another thing that's great about the tablet is the harder you press, the darker a line is. So I can press really hard here and then lighter and lighter and lighter, and it picks that up just like if it was a real, you know, piece of paper. So I'm just adding these textures in here. And because the leaves were gray, when I put the white lines over it, you see them, and it conveys in your brain mentally that they're white. Because nothing is pure white. Everything has varying shades of grays to it.
That's very cool. It's looking awesome already.
Yeah, and see, that was just very, very fast. And it's just the same thing over and over again. I'm going to go, I would just stop in the middle, but my OCD would freak out.
I know what you mean. Okay. I think a lot of us are that way.
I know. I'm just like, but then it won't be finished when I show everybody at the end. They'll say, what's up with the side? All right, maybe I'll leave it just half finished. Okay. So does anybody have any questions about that part? Does that make sense?
I don't know if we have any questions yet. There's a little bit of a lag, so it'll take a minute or so to get to the point where they have questions. Okay, good. There's a lot of information that they're sharing, though, about the different programs that you can use.
Yes, good.
Because, you know, Photoshop can be expensive.
Yes.
And but there is a free version of Photoshop out there.
Yep.
That's what I use because I didn't want to pay for Photoshop because you know, I didn't think that I would use it as much. Now that I use it a lot, I might actually consider it.
Yep. And the way that Photoshop works now is it is a subscription-based program, so you pay a monthly fee and you can use any of the programs. So it's a lot more affordable than buying $600 worth of Photoshop in one gulp. So now it's a little bit more easy to swallow if you're looking to start using Adobe programs.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I would recommend Adobe actually has a 30-day trial thing that they do. I would recommend trying out the free version first and really get to know it really well, and then do the 30-day trial, see if that's something that you really want, and then go ahead and purchase it, because I mean, you want to make sure that it's something that you feel comfortable with.
And they have Photoshop for the iPad too. I think it's called Photoshop Elements or something like that. That's like a dumbed down version, which is great if you're just trying to start out with Photoshop. So okay, so we've got our texture basically going on down here. The next thing I need to do is they want some nice big succulents right here in the center. And if I were to draw out these succulents leaf by leaf and make them all detailed and stuff, it would take forever. So I cheat, of course. I'm going to go to basically Google here, which I can you see my Google screen? All right, so I'm going to type in succulents, and I will wait for my internet to start working. Go to images, and I will just scroll through and look for succulents that I think would be nice on this cake. It's always great if they have real clean edges, like this one right here. Imagine cutting around this edge. It's like a nice, sharp, defined edge. There's no cutoffs. There's nothing interfering with this succulent, like little pieces of grass going over it and stuff. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking for. I actually already found one that I really like.
Good.
And it's this one right here. I found this on Etsy. This lady is selling succulent cuts.
Oh, cool.
And so they're just conveniently on this white background here.
White background is good.
It is very good. Very good. Makes it easy.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to choose a couple of these ones that I want. And this button right here is a zoom tool. So I'm going to just click a couple of times just to really get to where I can see it. And then I'm going to go to my magnet selector tool. And this, I mouse over, it says magnetic lasso tool. And it looks like a little squiggly mark with a magnet on top of it, which I think is funny. And I'm going to cut out around this edge so that I can take this succulent and move it onto my other background. And if I try and work, when you first open an image, if you try and do anything to it, it's not going to let me edit this program because the background is locked. And that's just how images are when you first open them. So I'm going to double click on this background to unlock it so that I can now edit it. So if you're doing something to an image and it says that it's locked, you can't edit it, that's what you need to do.
Okay.
So to cut something out, I'm going to just start on any edge, anywhere at all, and I'm just going to move along the edge and it will automatically stick to the edge. And I click every time I get to like a point where I might want to switch directions. So this sharp little edge here, I click there. I'm just dragging along, and you can do this very, very fast. And let's say I come up here and I accidentally went, oops, that's not where I want to go. Press the delete button and it will delete the last anchor point that you put down.
Very nice. That's a good tip.
Yes. Instead of having to start all
over again,
yeah.
Which would be horrible.
Which I have done. Oops. Hey, see? It's easy to kind of get a little wonky. I try not to care too much, though, about the edges and things. So I have this selected. I'm going to take this whole little tab here, which you can grab tabs by grabbing the little name up here, and so that you can basically pull out the window. Go away, window. And then I'm going to click on this succulent, and I'm holding down and I'm dragging over, and I'm going to bring it into right here. And obviously it's very, very small. So we're going to do the same thing we did in the beginning to make it bigger by pressing Command T, holding down Shift. And I'm going to make this larger to what I want it to look like, right? And it's kind of crappy looking, It's like, it is. It's a little dark. It's got this rough edge and everything. And so I'm going to show you guys how to fix that. The way you can adjust how light and bright something is you go to Image, Adjustments, Curves, and that brings up this window. And I'll explain a little bit what this is. Basically, in the upper right-hand corner, this represents brightness, whites. So you can see white, light here. This is middle tones, and this is dark tones. And this curves will adjust whatever layer you're on. So if it was on the cake layer, it would adjust the cake layer. If it's on the flower layer, it'll adjust that layer. So you can adjust different layers to different lightnesses and brightnesses. Mm-hmm. So what I usually do is the same thing with every flower, is I take just right in the middle and I click down and just push it up, and that just brightens up those shadows and things so that it's a little bit less dingy looking, brings out the colors a little bit more. And that's all I do to it. If I felt like the colors were like I needed more contrast, you can click down by the darkness and bring that down a little bit, and that would adjust the contrast. You see that adjustment here?
Yeah.
If I go the other way, I mean, that looks really bad, but you should always encourage yourself to mess around with things like this. And if you don't like it, you can just say cancel or undo, or, but I'm going to go with that.
Okay.
The next thing I do is I use a filter. Now, this is another thing that you can purchase. You don't have to do this. You can probably use a posterized filter. There's all these different filters here in Photoshop. So you can, I don't remember exactly where it is, but one of these things has posterize in it that basically does a similar stylize, maybe, I don't know, one of these things. But I use something called Topaz Labs, and it's $29.99 for the one that I use, which is clean. And that, it basically makes a really cool posterizing effect on whatever it is, whatever layer we're working on. So I'm going to let that open a second. So I've got my little blurry, yucky looking succulent here. Mm-hmm. And then there's these different suggestions, kind of like automatic posterizations that it suggests. And I will just choose one of them. Usually it's the top one I go with. It's cartoon. So it blurs out all of the pixelization. It kind of highlights the edges and things and makes it look like paint. Mm-hmm. You can adjust how strong this is with these little levers and things off to the side if you feel like it's going too much or you want it to go more. So if you turn down, sometimes I'll just like randomly move these to see what happens. It's
the best way to learn, right?
Yeah, it really is. So this seems really like simple, but it really isn't. This is a lot of information for a sketch, but it's got all of the things that we want to convey, which is the shape, the color, and kind of the idea that this is a succulent, right? Uh-huh. So I'm going to say okay. So now we have more of like a painterly effect of a succulent, mm-hmm. right?
Which looks so much better.
It does. And it still has these little rough edges and things here. So the last thing we're going to do is go back to our brush. Actually, we need to pick a color first. Let's see, where is it? This button right here is called an eyedropper tool. And it's also a color picker. So if you don't want to be using this right here to be like kind of guess, like, see, I want a green color, but I don't really know what green in here is going to match in here. Mm-hmm. An easy thing to do is to use this color picker and just choose a darkish color right off of your image so that you already know that the color that you've chosen will complement the thing that you're going to be drawing on, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then go back to your brush, make sure that this is the right size. Brush presets. About 6.
Use a pencil?
Yep, I'm using my pencil tool.
And there were a couple of people that were asking, you're using that monoprice tool right now, is that right?
I am. That's what I'm using. I'm going to turn off the black so that you can see how I'm sketching onto this flower a little bit better. I am going to just basically roughly, like super roughly, just sketch around these edges. I'm just tracing. You don't have to be able to draw a straight line. It actually looks better if you, the kind of the rougher you are.
If you go out of the lines a little bit.
Yeah, go out of the lines a little bit. I will just trace over each one of these little petals here. And that tricks the eye into thinking that you drew each one of those petals and then filled it in with paint. And then what I will do is basically wherever there's shadow, I will put in a little bit of just extra lines like I built that shadow up with pencil.